Welcome to Evangelicalish, where we discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly of the American evangelical church, deconstruction, faith, and God's love through it all. Join us for these episodes live on our Evangelicalish YouTube page on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central, and 6 o'clock Pacific. Let's journey together. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Evangelicalish. I'm April.
I'm Paul. And
we're missing Jeremy. Yes, he was having a migraine that doctor prescribed no screen time for 24 hours. So he is out this week, but we'll be back next week. But we have a really awesome guest, which we will get to momentarily. But first, we have an exciting announcement, which we have mentioned recently, but it is officially a fish.
Officially a fish.
Okay. We are meeting in person in Nashville. Woo-hoo. We're having a live show at the Lipstick Lounge on October 1st. It's a Saturday. And we have decided that tickets are free if you want to come. We have a suggested kind of gift if you want to help us get there, because we're paying for all of this ourselves. So you can give if you want, but you do not have to. It is free, and it's going to be a fun time. We're going to do a live show there that we will then put on the podcast the next week. So it won't be live at the moment, but we're going to record it. But it's going to be so much fun. I'm so excited to finally meet you in person, Paul.
I know we've been doing this podcast for a couple of years and have never seen each other face to face, any of the three of us. So we're going to hang out in Nashville, and we're inviting everybody else to come join us. And getting the Lipstick Lounge as our venue, I'm so excited. And so, like you say, we're going to do a live podcast, record a live podcast there, record a podcast. It won't be streamed live. Yeah. And then when we're finished with the podcast, we're going to do Q&A together. And then they start charging a cover at 8 o'clock, but all of us who are already in get to be in without paying the cover. And they are famous at the Nashville Lipstick Lounge for karaoke. And so April, we are going to throw down on karaoke together.
And I absolutely love that our first event is at a place called the Lipstick Lounge.
No doubt.
That is safe for all humans. It's like an LGBTQ safe bar that I just feel is so fitting for.
So October 1st
ones.
Yeah, exactly. October 1st, meet us in Nashville. Info is on our brand new website, by the way.
Yes, another announcement.
At evangelicalish.com. And so all the information of how you register, find out all the info. We have special rates on hotel rooms. So go check it out at evangelicalish.com.
Yeah, someone says we've got to include the karaoke on the podcast. I don't know. But maybe we'll film it, and that could be some TikTok content if you follow us at Evangelicalish.
After we get a few bourbons in us, we may not be willing to have that recorded.
Or maybe so.
Can't wait. We want to meet you all in Nashville, October 1st. Be there. And by the way, if you can't come, but you would say we would like to help with the cost of that, you can also give a one-time gift. Now, it's not tax deductible. We are a for-profit work, but your reward will be in heaven, right, April? You can give and help. No, I'm kidding on that. But just if you want to just help what we do, you can either subscribe on our website, which we'll talk about, or give one time to help underwrite the event. So there we go.
And hopefully this is successful. So if you are near Nashville, we would love to see you, because if this is successful and does well, then we can do more of these and go to other parts of the country, because y'all are everywhere. So
yep.
And so are we. Paul's in California. I'm in Tennessee. Jeremy's Oklahoma. So, and you'll get to see us all meet in person for the first time.
It's true. It'll be fun. October 1st, be there. Evangelicalish.com is where the info is. Now, let's get to our guest. We're missing Jeremy today, but we've got somebody to fill those shoes in a big way. David C. Smalley is a friend of mine. We met online. We've still not seen each other face to face either, but he's a podcaster and a comedian and an actor. And I want to share a little bit of what he does, because as frustrated as we get with Christians and right-wingers and all of that, oh my God, so does David. And let me show you just a little clip of what he does.
If you are honestly okay with helpless children dying in a tornado as God watches and does nothing to save them? Are you okay with glorifying that God and calling him good?
You know, we're going to go back to the Beslan example. As children were dying, this is, we're getting nowhere.
Are you okay with it, Andre? Are you okay with it? Can you lie down at night and go to sleep knowing that you are praising and worshiping a good deity?
Simply because you disagree with what he does that change his existence? Does it change anything because you disagree with what God does?
So you do
On this little speck of dust. You got to think of this earth as a little speck of dust.
So you do disagree with it.
Things seem so.
And you know what? And that's exactly.
And so that's what he does. Atheist, podcaster, actor, comedian David C. Smalley joins us here on Evangelicalish. Christian,
welcome.
Bring back memories, Paul. You're traumatizing me over here. That guy, if you find that video, first of all, hi, thanks for having me. If you go watch that actual video, the reason that kind of spiked in popularity a little bit compared to my other videos, which isn't saying a lot, it's because it's so rare that I actually get that frustrated with someone, and I actually hang up on that guy. And I think he was one of, I think now in 12 years, there's been 3 people that I've hung up on, and 2 were flat earthers and that guy.
Oh, wow.
Everyone else, I just beat my head against the wall and take one for the team. But my goal is to inspire these types of conversations, usually, not to beat up on anyone. And I don't want to hear, I don't want to have a Christian listen to the show and then hear me be really rude or mean to someone and think I'm never talking to that guy. I want to be able to say, go listen to any episode and you'll see that while I disagree, I'm not beating anyone up. But that guy just he just wouldn't answer the question. And you may think you're like, okay, that's a funny little clip from 60 seconds. It was like 30 minutes of that. The guy would just sidestep every question. You notice I was like, so you are fine with praising a deity that does these terrible things? He's like, that doesn't change that he exists. What the hell are you talking about? Nobody was talking about the existence of the God. We were talking about you praising him for being good. Do you? Speck of dust. Answer the damn question. I was losing my mind. Because in addition to being like debating and having the conversation and doing the dialogue, that's all fun. But I'm also producing content, right? I'm trying to produce content that I think people are going to enjoy. And if we're having 2 separate conversations, people are going to check out. There's no point in having a show. So yeah, just laughing at me when I ask something or refusing to answer the question, those are my triggers. So if you'd like to come on the show to be hung up on, do that.
And I was listening to maybe your most recent podcast this morning, and you're having this conversation with this guy of like, are you accusing me of lying? And all of that's going on. But you guys were talking about Christian nationalism, and in fact, we sort of scheduled this because you reached out to me and said, I want to have a conversation about Christian nationalism. So what is it that, and we talk about it quite a bit on this show too, but what has piqued your interest or got you talking about Christian nationalism these days?
Oh man, Donald J. Trump. Can I get an amen? That's what's causing everybody to talk about Christian nationalism. It's disturbing. People have asked me for years, and I mean way back when I started this, why do you care what people believe? So what? Your mom believes in Jesus. Why do you need to go try to talk her out of Jesus? That was never my point. My point was not to talk my mom out of Jesus. The point was to not, I don't want my mom to be vulnerable to BS sales pitches, right? I don't want my mom to send money to Robert Tilton and buy the snake oil from the guy that shows up, or to get an anointed rag from Peter Popoff. I don't want my mom to be taken advantage of or
make donations to the Trump family.
Right. That's any of that stuff. It's being duped into something and then financially funding something that's actually working against your own interest.
Which by the way, Trump got raided in Mar-a-Lago, and I use the term raid because raid can be okay. The FBI does raid bad guys quite a bit. I got a fundraising email from Eric Trump it had to be within 3 minutes after the raid. Like, Dad's been raided, give money.
That was literally how I found out about it, because I still get texts from Trump, former
Wow.
GOP life. And it was a text that was like, "We need you now to fight the evil Democrats. They're after my dad."
Yeah, it's Christian nationalism is a cult of its own. It's they don't realize how similar they are to North Korea. Like, it's so
Yeah.
it's incredible to me that you could see the Taliban and their flags, or Al-Qaeda and their flags, and they're all riding these Toyota trucks and they're all holding these AK-47s. And then you could just put that side by side with a bunch of Trump supporters in Ford F-150s with their big Trump flags holding AR-15s. I'm like, you guys just have a different version of what you're believing. Like, I don't think they don't realize that they are the extremists in our country. They think they're saving us from extremists. And it comes down to controlling information and a lack of critical thinking and a lack of fact checking. People just don't know how to do it. They don't know who to trust. It all started with this idea of fake news. And it's I think it's one of the most dangerous things in our country right now is Christian nationalism. It's pushing racism, even if they don't say it out loud. It's pushing nationalism and American exceptionalism. So here we are staring at our own belly button, thinking we're the greatest country in the nation, when by every possible standard you can imagine, that's just not the case. And every therapist will tell you that the first step to fixing your own problems is acknowledging that you have one. So if you're just staring at your own belly button, picking the lint out, thinking you're the greatest in the world, what are you ever going to start working on? So we need to make progress for our citizens. We need to do better. We need to make moves. And in order to do that, we have to admit we're not doing it so well right now. And so Christian nationalism grabs onto those people who are vulnerable, grabs onto people who are more likely to believe BS from a leader because he says he was anointed by God, and whoever pretends to be the most religious tends to get their attention, and then they sort of ball that all up into be a real patriot and care about your country, which apparently means wave a Confederate flag. So yeah,
Right.
that's why I found it to be so dangerous.
Well,
And
they're also, they don't even follow their own faith of what Christianity is actually supposed to be. Like, I don't know if you guys saw, I think it was yesterday, Ron DeSantis switched out the word and said, like, we wrestle not against, I don't remember what he said. It was like, instead of saying the devil's agenda, it wasn't agenda, but he literally put in the word leftist instead of devil. And then Sean Foyt, super spreader Sean Foyt, retweeted that and was like, yeah, standing for truth and God or something. And then God TV, which is a Christian media company, called out Sean Foyt for changing up scripture, which is a big no-no. If you're a Christian, you don't change the word of God, especially if you're a literalist. Called him out for doing that and said he was blaspheming. And then Sean Foyt doubled down and said that he was being persecuted and that God TV is now woke.
Oh. And by the way, so DeSantis says, true, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but the left sure seems to be operating in all the evil ways of the enemy, just saying. Is that what?
This is what he said. Hold on. I'll get it. You keep talking. I'll find it. I'll find the exact quote.
Well, let me ask you, David, as an atheist, when Christian people, and we're people who are probably still sort of in that space saying, hey guys, you're screwing our religion, you're screwing our beliefs of following the story of Jesus that we like. What does the idea of Christian nationalism seem like to you from a perspective of an atheist?
It seems,
I guess it's different maybe than what we see. Yeah.
No, it just seems expected. Like, you know how white people were shocked at the amount of racists that came out of the woodwork, and all of our black friends were going, where have you been? Like, this has been my life, my whole life. And white people are going, what? People are going to drive into that's kind of how atheists are when Christians go, wow, this Christian thing looks a little dangerous sometimes. I'm as an atheist, I'm going, yeah, that's what we've been saying since about 1963. Maybe we shouldn't intermingle these things with our politics and school and funding and, you know, all of that. So I think that it's almost like the Westboro Baptist Church situation, where you may find sometimes where you and I will agree politically. I will turn to the terrible person who is fighting against you, and I'll say, actually, this terrible person is right as far as the Bible's concerned. They're quoting it accurately, and your liberal, more progressive, loving, humanist-based mindset is wonderful. I want more of that in our country and in the world, but you're not so biblically accurate sometimes. And so I've said on my show that in order to be a really good person, you got to be pretty bad at Christianity. And if you want to be a good Christian, I don't think you can be a very good person. So, and that's a point of contention on the show, and that's something we could talk about. But I think a lot of these people that are going line by line, taking the Bible literally, they're kind of right, even though it's disgusting, which is why I'm not a Christian. Like if I found that there was a way to do it the way you guys are doing it, I probably could have still been a Christian, but I don't see a way to do that and be consistent with what the Bible says. I feel like in order to be to be loving and inclusive and welcoming and non-judgmental like you guys are, I feel like you have to kind of avoid a lot of the uncomfortable verses.
I think that's fair. I did find the verse really quick, so I want to read it before I said it. But Ron DeSantis said, "So put on the full armor of God, take a stand against the left's schemes." That's supposed to be the devil's schemes. And then Sean Point tweeted that Governor DeSantis coming in hot with scripture today. That's what he got called out on.
Nice.
Well,
Scripture. He called it scripture. I think that's their problem.
Yes, that was it, because he called it
scripture.
And then doubled down when he got called out. That he was
And God, just think about it like this. I mean, if that can happen with one guy and thousands of people can support it, imagine what happened over a couple of thousand years, you know, with these scriptures and a word being changed here or there, or vocabulary evolving within a civilization and things changing and words don't mean what they used to mean. And how are we ever going to know what this message is really supposed to be, you know?
Well, and I think, and that's where a more progressive Christianity does come, is we don't take it literally. We take in context, and that, like, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know what the intention of a lot of this scripture was when it was written, because it's been translated multiple times, and I wasn't there when it was written, and I wasn't there when people decided what books went into the canon either. But the basis of Jesus's teachings is what I'm cool with, and that's kind of just leave it there and let go of the black and white ideology.
And I think
even the Jesus stuff I have a lot of problems with, but go ahead, Paul.
I was just going to say to your question or statement there, you know, I have people say to me a lot like, "Oh, you cherry pick the Bible." And I'm like, yes, all of us cherry pick the Bible. All of us. You have to cherry pick the Bible to exist in American culture today, because you're not committing genocide or bashing babies heads against the rocks, or you know, even Jesus like told a woman, like, I'm not going to help you right now because I got to help the kids, not the dogs. So we're all cherry picking the Bible, and we're all finding the places where we say, okay, this I find inspiring. Some of it, I think evangelicals have just decided this is our interpretation of it, and this is where we're going to go. And when you really start studying, it's different than that. But you know, we're all finding our morality from somewhere, I guess. And so some of that is cherry picking the Bible. And yeah, so I tend to be, like April says, I focus on that story of Jesus a lot more. And I know you and I have talked about that some, David, but let me ask you, like, as an atheist, this is what Christians would ask you, where do you get your morality from? Without Jesus, you can't be good. Where does your morality come from, David?
Satan. No, I'm kidding. Ron DeSantis. Sorry. I have a hard time being
Oh my God. By
serious.
the way, DeSantis terrifies me because he's like a much more intelligent and much more dark-hearted, evil, horrible
Yeah.
Trump. Like Trump
He's
is just a narcissist, dumb shit.
Yeah.
DeSantis is really an evil guy. That's
Yeah.
They're like Russian dolls,
yeah.
right? One just fits right into the other, and you never know. It was Trump the whole time.
Oh man.
Yeah, he's like a younger, more articulate, not say the dumb stuff out loud Trump. And
Yeah.
so you're right. He's pretty dangerous. My morality is based on the facts of reality. And that sounds like I'm avoiding philosophy, but I'm really not. It comes down to reducing human harm, improving overall thriving of human beings, and leveraging the mechanism of John Rawls' veil of ignorance in order to do that, in order to remove my bias. If I didn't know which person I would be, which way is the proper way to go forward, reducing harm and improving thriving. It's a pretty simple formula. And for the most part, I would say if you were to weigh it, the largest number of morals or moral decisions one would have to make would be subjective or based on consequentialism, weighing the consequence of each individual issue. But I do think that there are moral objectives that do exist, and some atheists disagree with me on that. And I think that that's a debate I've had multiple times on my podcast, as far as bringing someone on who says, no, God made morals, and that's why they're objective. My argument to Christians is it is actually you who supports a subjective morality, because according to your belief, whatever God says is good, right? So theoretically, to test this, if God says, all right, between this day and this day, I want you to kill everyone who's not a Christian, that becomes good because God said it. So now you've changed what is good, despite what you know, because God said so. So that thing becomes good. Or if God looks back on something that was bad and that you know is bad, and he deems it good, you now have to accept that as good. So however God is feeling that day, and we know God has feelings according to the Bible. We know God has regrets. He actually repented that he made us, maybe because of my podcast. We don't know.
Because of the atheists.
Yeah, it's clearly us. But we know that he has feelings, but we also know that he doesn't change. Malachi 3:6, I believe, says, "I, the Lord, do not change." So he changes, but he doesn't change, but he has regrets and he has feelings. So what we can gather from that is that if God changes his mind but doesn't change as a being, then you have to roll with that in order to continue to say God is good and that your morality comes from God, which by definition makes Christian morality subjective. As to where the atheist can say that is, torturing a baby just for your own amusement is objectively morally wrong because it causes pain, it causes human harm without human flourishing. Therefore, it's wrong. It's wrong if an atheist does it. It's wrong if a Christian does it. It's wrong if God does it. It's wrong if Jesus were to do it. It's still an immoral act, even if Jesus or God are doing it. And so that's why the atheist can have an objective morality and the Christian cannot.
I have a question for you, and then we can talk about other things. But why atheism?
You are the host. You ask questions,
Yes.
April. That's what you do.
But why atheism and not agnosticism? Like, to put it in evangelical terms, do you know that you know that you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is no God?
No, and that's not what atheism means. I think that's a fundamental misunderstanding that I think most people have about the idea. And I think it's because many atheists are so strong in their opinions that it comes off as knowledge. But atheism is like a meaning without. I'm just without a theism. So agnostics are without a theism. So agnostics are atheists. And an atheist is agnostic if they're honest. So to say agnosticism or Gnosticism deals with knowledge, to know, and then agnostic lacking knowledge, right? So when it comes to knowledge, I either have knowledge and claim that I have the knowledge, or I can admit that I am missing some information, which is true. So when it comes to knowledge, I am agnostic, but knowledge isn't the same as belief, right? There's a subset there. So when you ask me what I believe based on what I know, I am missing information, but based on the knowledge I do have, I do not have a belief in a theism, which makes me atheistic. So technically I would be an agnostic atheist, but those things answer different questions. Do I admit I'm missing knowledge? Yes, I'm agnostic. Do I have a belief in a deity? No, I'm atheist.
Gotcha. Well, I didn't even know that. I was misinformed on that. So thank you for explaining that.
And are Christians right when they say April 1st is National Atheist Day? Probably.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Probably. And they are. And it's funny because technically the Bible does say the fool has said in his heart there is no God. I disagree that it's a fool, but I don't mind having an extra day just for us. I'm all about it.
Take the holiday. All right, we're going to take a quick break here in the show. When we come back, we'll ask David how he deals with a mom that doesn't agree with his atheism, and maybe April and I will admit that we were once Christian nationalists. So coming up, stick around on Evangelicalish.
Loving Evangelicalish? Follow us to catch all the latest content and encouragement. You can check us out on TikTok by following @Evangelicalish or subscribe on YouTube by searching Evangelicalish. That's evangelical with an ISH. And don't forget to catch our live streams each and every single Wednesday night on YouTube at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, and 6 Pacific. And now, back to the Evangelicalish podcast.
All right, April, we had the exciting announcement that we're live in Nashville on October 1st. And we have a new website and a way that people can help us with the show, subscribing to help underwrite what we do. These are big times for Evangelicalish.
Yes, we have been talking about doing something outside of just this podcast, this show, for a long time. And I think we've been even hinting at it, like something's coming for months at this point. And it just took a while to get off the ground. But we are officially launching we're calling it the Ish community.
Yep.
And if you go to evangelicalish.com, there's a few different tiers that you can do. And then once, or I think it's like every other month, it comes out to about 6 times a year. We're going to not be live, but have a private Zoom community with you guys, whoever wants to join us. So if you want more information and if you want to support us or join our awesome new community, you can just go to evangelicalish.com. And our different tiers, just for funsies, are called false prophet level, the beast level, and the antichrist level. So
I had
not to brag, but
I had a friend checking out the website and he's like, "Oh, you're going to drive people away with that." And I think it's really funny. So yes, the false prophet level, the beast level, and the antichrist level of subscription. And for putting context on this, some people may have heard of Patreon. The idea of a Patreon site was, Mozart had patrons, Beethoven had patrons, William Shakespeare. They were able to do their creative art by having patrons who helped underwrite their work. Now, we're not comparing ourselves to Shakespeare, but for some people, some things we do are important and helpful, and we get messages from you every day saying thank you for allowing us to not be evangelical, but to be evangelical-ish and giving that space. And if you think that's important and want to help us to continue to do this because we have children to feed and mortgages to pay, you can do it in sort of a Patreon-like subscription on our website at evangelicalish.com. So that kind of gives a context.
Yeah, I think so. Our ish keeps getting bigger. Evangelical gets smaller and smaller. I think one day we're just going to be the ish.
The ish is big because
for now. Yeah, Brian asked, why is there no Jezebel level? That's because I have red hair. That's my assumption. And so they skip over Jezebel with me and just go straight to demon, Satan spawn, Antichrist. So if you want a Jezebel level, you have to find a podcast that does not include a redheaded woman. That's my theory anyway.
That's interesting.
Yes.
All right. So if you can, and we know budgets are tight these days, but go subscribe. And like April said, about 6 times a year, we're going to have a special Zoom room discussion time rather than this podcast for those who are subscribers. So a little bit of a perk, but just help us. By the way, we're not a 501c3. We're not going to violate 501c3 not-for-profit laws. We are a for-profit work. So you're not going to get a tax deduction, but you will get our love and affection for your help.
Yes, so much love.
Come and help. Evangelicalish.com is where it all is. Now, let's get back with our guest, David C. Smalley, who joins us. And David, we love having you on. Thanks for being here. And so you have a family member who is Christian. How does it go with you doing what you do as an atheist podcaster and mom sometimes?
And a big Trump supporter, right?
Yeah. She's a Trump supporter as well. It's been up and down. I mean, there have been really rough moments, like full on fights, like just, accusations of being in a cult both ways, insults, just like anybody. I mean, sometimes it gets the better of me, and I respond in ways that I probably wouldn't be proud of, and I'm sure she has too. But we had a talk the other night. It was about a 3-hour conversation, and I don't want my mom thinking that, every time we have a private conversation, I'm going to go on some broadcast and tell the story. But I can tell you that I think we had a breakthrough. And what I did, and everyone's probably thinking, what did you say to have a breakthrough? It's not that I convinced her to think like me. It's that I finally convinced her that that's not my goal. So a lot of times what she would say is, so if I don't think just like you, I'm in a cult. If I don't vote like you, I'm a terrible person. And I say, well, no, thinking like me isn't the point, but just being your own critical thinker is what I'm looking for. She would send TikToks as evidence, like just a guy in prison who got arrested for January 6th, storming the Capitol. She would sit like he's just ranting about they're all coming for you and the guns and the Dems are going to destroy America. She would send that as evidence. And I'm like, Mom, that's not fact-based. That's just a guy in prison saying things that you can't prove. Like what I'm sending you, it may be a TikTok, but it's from Verify. It's from PolitiFact. It's from factcheck.org. And they cite their sources for you to go look it up. And she was just like, you got TikToks? I got TikToks. And I'm like, no, not all TikToks are created equal. And so we just got missing each other over text. She's like, you sent me one, I'm going to send you one. And I'm like, Mom, it's not the same. Oh, so liberal TikToks are good. I'm like, no. Again, she kept missing my message. And I think a lot of us, as we're communicating to these folks, they think that we want to pull them kicking and screaming out of their mindset. Now, while we may all want that, ultimately for them to change their mind, that can't be the goal. The goal needs to be critical thinking. So what I did with my mom and what I want everyone to do is just ask questions. Ask questions and go as far as you need to go into the conspiracy rabbit hole. As an example, do you believe she had told me at one point, Beto O'Rourke is a felon who can't own guns. And I go, well, where did you find that information? TikTok. She sent me the TikTok of a guy sitting on a stool who just said it. And I go, well, if you look at the El Paso arrest records, if you look at what he's talked about, if you look at factcheck.org as well as PolitiFact, they all say 24 years ago, he had a misdemeanor DUI. And before that, when he was a teenager, he jumped a fence and got arrested for trespassing, but he was let go and never received charges. So he does own guns. He inherited guns from his great uncle. What do you say to that? And it's, well, that's not what I heard. Okay, that's fine. But I have facts and evidence that can back it up. Right. So we go down this rabbit hole. And I go, okay, so do you believe now that Beto can own guns? Yeah, fine. Sure. I believe that. Okay, cool. So can you acknowledge that you got wrong information from conservative TikTok? Yes. Cool. Then we just move on. Do you believe Joe Biden won the election? No, it was a stolen election. Why do you believe that? Well, this and this and this. I was given a reason. I listen. I listen to the reasons why Joe Biden stole the election. And I say, what makes you believe that? and she'll tell me about a TikTok she saw where a guy said he saw some stuff and another guy said he saw some stuff. And I go, okay. And I just move on because I can't. I'll say, you do know that Donald Trump's attorneys lost 60 cases trying to prove that there was election fraud. Yeah. Does it bother you that they lost the cases? Well, it's something to think about. I wasn't aware of that. Cool. I appreciate it. I don't hammer. I don't say ha ha. I don't do a dance. I don't call her stupid. I just go, okay, cool. Let's just put that off to the side. You can keep going. Whoever your person is, keep going. Keep going.
Didn't she tell you, David, once? Didn't I hear you say once she told you if you ran for president, she would not vote for you for president?
Yeah, because she said, I think you'd make Christianity illegal. And we actually talked about that the other night, and she laughed when I told her that, and she didn't remember telling me that. So I think she would vote for me eventually. She told me I should run for office. She told me multiple times I need to run, and I said, "Would you vote?" And she goes, I was like, "Yeah, you told me you wouldn't vote for me." She said, "I did." I was like, "Yeah, you said I'd make Christianity illegal," and she said, "I don't remember saying that," but yeah, we had
love of mom is going to win out.
I kept going. I kept pushing, right? So keep going with your person. Did we land on the moon? Did we, did Joe Biden win the election? Just keep going. We eventually got to Michelle Obama being a man.
Oh, I've heard that one.
Yeah, which is another conspiracy on the right. And she was immediately, she goes, I don't know. Do you guys curse on this show? Do you know?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Hell yeah.
Okay. I didn't want to violate your rules. She says, she goes, yeah, I saw that. That's some bullshit. And I was like, how do you know? Right? That's the question. It's not, aha, mom, see, they're liars, Bob. It's not a victory lap. Be inquisitive. It's a Socratic method. I said, how do you know that's bullshit? She goes, well, there's all kinds of evidence that she's a woman. She was a basketball player, and I get it. She's tall and she's strong, but there ain't nothing wrong with a woman being strong. I'm like, exactly, mom. I agree with you. And I go, so why do you think there's wrong information on this side of TikTok? She goes, well, some people they're just full of shit. And I go, okay, that's fine. I said, now, how do you know for sure though that she's not a man? Well, you can look it up. Show me. Right. So now my mom is fact checking. That's all I care about. I care about her being in the mode of maybe not everything I get from this TikTok thing is true. Right. Yeah. And she goes, oh, well, I know it's not all true, David. I'm not stupid. I'm like, okay, I'm not calling you stupid. I just want to know how you can tell the difference between bullshit and something that's true. So how do we know? And I said, because mom, you're saying we have all sorts of evidence that Michelle Obama is a woman. And I would agree with you, but I would say I think we have just as much evidence that Joe Biden won the 2020 election. There's court document after court document after court document. In fact, we may have more evidence quantitatively that Joe Biden won the election than Michelle Obama is a woman. So as far as birth certificates and amount of evidence that could exist for Michelle Obama. So that got her to start going, okay. So then I was like, so do you think Joe Biden has dementia? Do you think Joe Biden is lost? Do you think, and then she starts, well, I did see a TikTok. Okay, tell me about this TikTok. Well, he was like shaking hands with nobody. Okay, I saw that. I know what you're talking about. I was like, have you seen the other angle of the same shot? She said, no. I was like, okay, is it suspicious to you that every video you send me is about 6 seconds long? Because if you see the angle from the other side, he's motioning towards somebody and shaking their hand as if like a across the room high five type thing. He points at them and then shakes like he's holding their hand. And then when he turns, someone is talking to him. So he pauses for a moment, listens, and then turns and walks away. I said, but these conservative TikToks zoom in really tight. So all you see is Joe Biden's face just looking confused and like he doesn't know what's going on. And he's shaking hands with nobody and then walks away. So I send her like this updated version. Go, hey, here's the other angle. If you have 35 seconds instead of 6, I think you'll see it from a different perspective. And she watches it and goes, oh, yeah, that one's bullshit too, though. Okay, cool. Well, I think he may not all be there, Dave, because there's another video where he goes to shake a hand. Let's watch the video together. And I just take the time to sit with her and look at it and go, what do you think's going on here? And how do you know that's true? How do you know that's false? And she's now on her own sending me stuff going, what about this? What's your liberal response to this? And I know she's being playful, but I'm like, well, here's the full video. And I reply, and it's an ongoing long process of asking questions and getting that person to be able to discern what's true and what's false.
Nicely done.
Once they have that
Right.
ability, you can start applying the other things that they claim to know. Have you ran that through the same sort of checks and balances?
I found that, and I've mentioned this before too, but Paul mentioned that we're former Christian nationalists, not proud of it. But one thing that kind of got me starting to question beliefs that I had, that because I grew up in it, so I was just surrounded in an echo chamber, but it was people asking me questions that I didn't really have the answer to, that in the moment I would just say, whatever talking point that I was taught to say, but they would stick with me after a while. And it probably took me a solid, 10 years of deconstructing before I got to this point. It was a very long, convoluted process, but it did eventually work.
I also explained to my mom, terms like confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Mhm.
If you do this in a condescending way, of course, they feel like you're calling them stupid. But my mom's not stupid. She just, she went to barber college after high school. I mean, she just focused on raising kids and getting a job. And she was a single mother, and she had a really rough childhood. And she improved my life millions upon millions of times over what her childhood was. So I don't knock her for that, but she didn't get to continue her education in academia at all, right? She didn't get into these formal debates. She didn't get into reading a lot of books. She was focused on working a manufacturing job and feeding her kids without being on government assistance. That's what she prides herself on. And so my mom's very strong. She's very stubborn. She's 70 now. So she's set in her ways, but she did start to sort of, I guess, come around to this idea that some of the information that's going to be out there is used to manipulate you. And I remember my mom teaching me as a kid, she would always say, believe none of what you hear and half of what you see. Like, my mom is the reason I'm a skeptic.
Oh,
And
wow.
I said that back to her. I go, Mom, you were like my skeptic sensei. Like, you told me, don't take anybody's bullshit. Don't believe people. They're going to use you. Tell me why it is. Why is it that everything that comes out of Trump's mouth, you just believe? I don't understand that. And then she goes, oh, I can't stand to hear him talk. What? Oh, yeah, he makes me sick. Oh, she's like, but I just think he's overall better for the country. Why? He puts America first. Mom, I know he says that, but give me an example of what he did that put America first.
And is that the goal, And,
right. And she would go, well, I don't keep up with all the day-to-day stuff. Yeah, that's something you're into. I'm not into it. And I'm like, Mom, this is not sports. This is our lives. And here's another thing. I go, Mom, this is our lives. My daughter just turned 18, so her granddaughter. And I said, her name's Talissa. And I said, Mom, what if Talissa, gets pregnant and ends up with an ectopic pregnancy and is in a hospital bed in agonizing pain, screaming for help, but can't have an abortion to remove the ectopic pregnancy because it violates the law. And she says, David, don't you think you're being a little dramatic? And I'm like, oh, you haven't heard.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
She doesn't know that this is happening because she doesn't have cable TV. She's not watching CNN. She's literally getting local news, local television stations, and TikTok. And so she didn't know it was really happening. So now I'm finding stories and I'm trying to send them to her to say, this isn't political. I want you to know there's a world out here that you haven't been exposed to. These things are happening. She didn't know about the 10-year-old girl who was raped in Ohio, who had to go to Illinois to get the
Indiana.
That story's not going to be on Fox News.
Right. And you can't go to Indiana and do that anymore now.
And not just that, but I think there was someone being investigated for criminal charges for letting her do it. And then they started talking about abortion tourism. And I was like, Mom, this was supposed to be about states' rights. And now they're saying you don't have the right to leave the state. I'm like, Mom, at what point do you realize this is becoming North Korea and less about freedom?
Yeah.
So she's, I had her take a political quiz. and she is predominantly lines up with Ron DeSantis, but like 87% or something. So we're going to disagree politically. And she finally asked me this question, which I was so happy. This is when I realized there was a breakthrough. She goes, okay, David. She goes, so what if I take this quiz, and what if I start fact checking and I start doing what you're doing with all this information, and I still want to vote for a conservative? I said, then you're going to vote for a conservative and we'll have a wonderful Christmas together. Like my issue is not that we disagree politically. My issue is that in that want we were not even sharing the same reality. And so I just want, if she comes to a different conclusion, that's fine. We have stuff to debate and make fun of each other over, and to like pick at each other about being conservative and liberal and whatever. We can have fun with that and not take it too seriously, as long as she got to that realization through logical means. But if she's just like being brainwashed via TikTok algorithm, and I had to explain that to her too, like the algorithm just shows her stuff that she's going to keep interacting with. And once she realized that, I'm like, you're being manipulated by an app that just wants to get money for showing you ads. Like, these people don't care about you. I love you. Please go on this fact-checking journey with me. And then one final thing she goes, well, who fact checks the fact checker, David? She goes, because everything you send me is all liberal fact check, factcheck.org and PolitiFact and Snopes. They're all liberals. I didn't argue with her. I didn't say that's not true. I didn't contradict her. I didn't say she was wrong. I said, let's look at an example, Mom. And I pull up factcheck.org because she had told me that one of the things she sent me, that Joe Biden sold all of our reserve oil to China. And I said, let's fact check that. So I go on to factcheck.org and I pull it up. Turns out there's a company in Houston, Texas that is owned by a Chinese company, and they bought 950,000 barrels of oil out of our 700 and something million that we have. 950,000 was sold to this company, which actually lowered gas prices dramatically, not just in Houston, but in most parts of the country, which is why we've seen gas plummet over the last couple of weeks. And so I'm reading this to her and she's like, oh, so it helped the economy. And I go, yeah, it helped the economy. It helped to put gas prices down. It just so happens the company was owned by a company in China. And I said, and to answer your question, who fact checks the fact checker? As I'm reading, I'm going, look, Mom, if you look here, it's got a link. It has a sentence. It's a statement like Joe Biden, blah, 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 according to the Petroleum something Institute. That's blue. You can click that. That opens up a PDF, and it's 16 pages long, and you can read in there the proof of what they're telling you, and it's on that petroleum company's website. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see all the other references that they used and link to those references. So they allow you to fact check them on these websites. And then she went, oh, well, that's pretty good, I guess.
Well, you're a very loving son to do that with your mom.
Well, I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm like, Mom, your TikToks aren't going to be that way. So anything you want to run by me, let's address it together. Don't just assume this stuff is true. They're all manipulating you.
And that's good input, because that's a question we get a lot from people, is how do you deal with these conservative parents? But, it's interesting. You and I have discussed sort of the story of Jesus stuff, but it was the story of Jesus that pulled me out of Christian nationalism, because I grew up with this idea that America would be punished for gay marriage. Katrina is because of gay marriage, all these things. And it just started hitting my heart that how we act to people around us doesn't look like this story of Jesus. And then in the Bush administration, he's a Christian, Cheney's a Christian, all the administration are Christian, and yet we're doing really shitty stuff. It really started to make me say, wait a second, something doesn't feel right here. And then when Obama was elected, and just the outright racism of watching Christians around me, that's what made me say, okay, this is bad stuff we've got going on. And the interesting thing, like, again, listening to your podcast I was listening to today, there is a disconnect from thinking that is required with this cognitive dissonance of Christian nationalism. And because I was listening, yelling at my phone as you and this guy Dallas are talking about facts, and he's talking about other facts, as Kellyanne would call it, alternative facts. And you're saying countries where we limit access to guns have less killing. And he's saying countries that commit genocide against their own people ban guns. And I'm just sitting there going, dude, these are not equal facts. You know, there's correlation and causation here that you're just missing, brother.
Well, and the first thing he said was, he said, let's say, David, you were able to prove to me with a bunch of facts that restricting access to guns reduces gun deaths. And I'm thinking, please ask me to do that, because I'd love to. And then he says, but then I could show you how people who were in those countries are worried that their country could take over them, or that they could be abused by their government because they don't have guns. See, you have your facts, I have my facts. And I'm like, pump the brakes, homie, because the facts I would have would line out. They restricted access to guns and gun deaths went down. The fact that you have is that people would be concerned about stuff. Like that's not an actual measurable or quantitative better or worse for humanity. That's just saying some people are going to get nervous. Like that's not the same thing. Right. So you're right. Not all these facts are equal. Even if you could show that, it doesn't mean it's like, well, then let's flip a coin. No, it's not. It's not the same thing.
Sorry, April, I'll let you jump in, but it's like, dude, Australia has banned AR-15s, and they're not a tyrannical government killing their people. I mean, how hard is this to figure out? Every other developed nation in the world limits these guns, and Sweden is not a tyrannical government killing its people. Yes, it is a socialist nation too, and it's not killing its people. I don't know why we can't get this.
Paul, it's crazy to me that anyone still believes that they can have enough guns to fend off the government.
No kidding.
All right, they will have nuclear weapons.
Have a conversation with David Koresh about that sometime, huh?
I mean, exactly. Even if you had nuclear weapons, Iran had nuclear weapons. We told them to stop that shit, right? I mean, you just because you have guns doesn't mean that you're on equal footing with the Marine Corps. Are you insane? I mean, if you have
drone strike, you'd be done. Yeah.
Listen, they don't even need. You may live in Ohio, and you're thinking, oh, they're going to send the Marine Corps. No, I think Davenport police can handle it. Okay, they're going to come in there. They're going to kick your door in with SWAT. They're going to take all your shit, and you're going to go to prison. They're not even going to notify the National Guard. Like you're not your own country that is a threat to the government. It's just crazy to me that they think holding on to that one rifle is going to somehow protect them from Joe Biden. It's just ridiculous.
I also, one of my favorite things is, especially leading up to the inauguration of Biden, there were so many conspiracies about how, like in March of that year, China was good, like Biden was going to hand over the keys to China because it was one big conspiracy, and Biden was this huge, big, bad villain that was literally his purpose was to destroy America and take over the world. And then the next sentence, he has dementia.
Right.
I'm like, pick a struggle. Is he like a big, bad, evil villain mastermind, or is he an old man with dementia?
And then in the next sentence, Trump is really president right now. You know, Biden's running the economy, but Trump is really president behind the scenes.
He's only like the 19th president. Or
the 19th president.
Yeah. I love how everything is Joe Biden's fault, but Trump's really president. That's one of my
Mike
favorites.
Lindell was in Springfield, Missouri, my old hometown, again saying, just wait, here it comes. Trump is going to be president. I mean, how many goalposts do you move? And Obama too was like, Obama was going to set aside the 2016 election. I heard it 100 times. He will not vacate the White House, blah, blah, blah. All of the things Trump tried to do, they said, Obama, and then they just forget that and move on to the next lie. It's just wacky.
It's the same with end times preachers. Anytime there's an end times cult that's like this is the date it's going to happen. They show up and the date comes and they all go outside and then they go right back into their trailer and make up a new date. Like it's nonsense.
Earlier, you were saying, I think right before we went live, how you are now exhausted with having these debates with Christians. I would love to hear about that because I'm also exhausted as a Christian.
Yeah. I mean, it's been 12 years and maybe it's, I went hard. I would go 3 hours, 4 hours. I think the longest show I had was just over 6 hours.
Wow. That's 2 Lord of the
because-
Ring movies.
I just didn't. I don't know if it's me being naive or it's something, gullible or what, but I just, I'm the guy that'll argue with the drunk. I'll stand there and go, no, there's a factual way to, and they're just like, yeah. And I'm like, no, there's a way to think about it. And I just don't know when to stop. So I'll just let someone keep being nonsensical because I just keep thinking you're in there somewhere and you know what I'm saying. And you know that there's a difference in this. Just like I get somebody like Dallas on the line and I'm like, you're saying this thing to try to save face on a show, but surely you know that those two facts aren't the same. Like it's obvious and it's clear. And so I want to let them talk. I want to give them enough space to talk things out. And one of my favorite quotes is by E.M. Forrester. He said, how do I know what I think until I see what I say? And so many of us have these ideas and thoughts, but we don't know what fuels them. And so when I ask enough questions, the person starts answering them and they've never had to say these things out loud before. Then they start to reconsider their position. The problem is that person will then not listen to my show before they come on. And so for 12 years, I have the same conversations. I bring things up and the person will kind of lock up in the moment and go, yeah, I don't know how to respond to that. And I don't want to beat them up. I just go, it's okay. Just promise me one thing. We can drop it. Just write it down somewhere. Like I really want you to take a pen and paper and just make a note. And then we can either talk about it later or promise me you'll go back and address it later. Text me with your answer later. If you don't have an answer now, that's fine. So whatever that thing is, let's say there's 10 of them. 4 months later, I'll be talking to another Christian and they'll say something similar. And I have the same response. And I'm going, my listeners are probably going, oh, I know where he's going with this one. I've heard this shit for 12 years. But it's effective and it makes the person stop and think and it makes them readjust their position. But I feel bad that the listener is hearing sort of this kind of the same show over and over. So I want to change it up and make it different, but I also want to be effective. And I've got a track record of being effective on the shows, people actually changing their minds. And anytime people say people aren't going to change their mind, it's happened. It's happened dozens of times. In fact, we just did a show with a guy who came on as a Christian guest and is now a non-believer because of the show. So
like you deconverted a Christian on your show?
Yeah, it just happened just the other day. Yeah, it's happened several times, but the most recent time, it's I think that I don't know the episode numbers, but the first one is Atheist Finds God. He was an atheist as a child and then became a believer and was a Christian most of his life. And then I forget the other episode number, but he came back as a non-believer.
Do you keep track of your deconverts?
No.
So that's just an evangelical thing?
I don't even have a deconversion yet.
It takes,
I'm
honestly, jealous. To still kind of answer that and address your original question, which I didn't really get to. It takes so much out of me. Like, I mean, I could go build a fence. I could go walk around Disneyland all day. I could go, when I do the road, right? When I'm as a comedian, when I'm touring for a month or two at a time, that's all exhausting. I never feel more tired than when I finish a 3-hour marathon with a fundamentalist Christian or white nationalist or Christian nationalist, someone that is just it takes a lot out of me. It's so draining. And there have been times where I've been just on the verge of like, because I feel like I'm trying to talk this person out of Stockholm syndrome. Like they're in a relationship with an abusive father and they just keep telling me, isn't it amazing? And I'm like, no, you're being abused. You're hating yourself. You're feeling guilty for things that are normal human instincts. You're hurting yourself and withholding happiness from yourself because you think an invisible deity is watching you. And you're not broken. Humans are not terrible people. Like you can be you and still be loved by other people. It's okay to express yourself. And I see them captivating themselves and praising the person who's keeping them captive, which is their own imagination of God. And so it's exhausting trying to constantly save someone from a burning building that doesn't want to be saved and is convinced the fire's not hot. I mean, it's
and keep
sad.
running back into the building. Yeah.
It's so funny that you just used the burning building analogy, because I've heard that my entire life, but on the flip, that it's non-Christians that are in a burning building and we have the truth and we have to go in there and save them.
Well, here's the thing. In your analogy, your God set the building on fire and wants credit for being the rescue team, you know?
That's fair.
Like, yep, it's very true.
He's in charge of everything. And so it's like he lit the house on fire, and then as he's dragging you out the window, he goes, you better, as my friend Ben Glebe says, say my name, bitch. It's
I mean, it is. It's like
it's an abusive relationship.
He's a good father. And I say, tell me one father you know of that tells their children, if you don't worship me in the right way, I'm going to set you on fire. Would you call that person a good father? And they're, well, yeah, but he came to pay the penalty for it, to pay the penalty for the system he put in place for the proclivities he created in us.
Well, that's it. That's exactly what I've been screaming for years. Anytime they'll be like, look, God lets you make mistakes. Don't you have a daughter? I'm like, here we go. I'm like, yep. Do you come in and rescue her all the time? No. Oh, so you let her make mistakes? Yep. But let me tell you this about my daughter. If she looked at me one day and said, Dad, we're pretty different, I don't think you're my father, I wouldn't lock her in the closet and set the house on fire. That's the difference in me and your God. So I would probably get a paternity test and take her with me and go, look, I'm your dad. I would provide the evidence she requested, just like Jesus showed his hands to Thomas. Don't act like your God is impervious to proving himself, because he's done it before.
Right.
Right. Also, the whole idea of like, oh, as a parent, you punish your child, you give them consequences for their actions. I'm like, yeah, but any consequence is to make them better. It's to like help them learn right and wrong. It's not to punish them forever.
And oh, by the way, we're now seeing spanking does not work. Violence to correct somebody and make them good doesn't work. But I get you, David. It's so tiring. On the abortion thing, I say to people all the time, show me where the Bible says banning abortion is a big priority for God. And I have to now every time say, and no, Psalm 139 doesn't say that. Jeremiah 1 doesn't say that. Luke 1 doesn't say that. The 10 Commandments don't say that. Show me somewhere else.
They just get hung up on murder. It's murder, full-term abortion. That's literally all they know. And
murder, though, is only an unlawful killing. And they'll say that to defend all the killings that God ordered in Jesus, and not that Jesus ordered one. That was a parable, but you know what I mean. Anytime God orders a killing, when I say God murdered, 1 Samuel 15:3, God murdered the Amalekites, they'll go, no. Murder is illegal killing. If God ordained it, it's a lawful killing. Therefore, it's just, justifiable homicide. You can't call it.
Is that like Richard Nixon saying it's not illegal if the president does it? Is that?
Yep. Just like Donald Trump can classify, can declassify documents.
If I take it home, it's declassified.
Yeah. How convenient is that?
So this is tiring because we have to do these interactions with Christians. And it's funny because, April gets called Jezebel all the time. And I get, heretic, false prophet.
Well, hey, Paul, I was going to tell you, false prophet is the original fake news. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same It's the same mindset. So like when January 6th, originally, I'm not trying to beat up on my mom, but just to show you the progress she's made. Originally, like literally on January 6th, I call my mom and I'm like, do you see what's happening? She's like, yeah, that's Antifa. Like that. Immediately said it was Antifa. That started with Alex Jones. Now, my mom doesn't watch TV. My mom doesn't watch, she's not subscribed to Alex Jones, but a meme from somewhere made it to her phone and she looked at it and goes, oh, it's that damn Antifa. Just immediately told me it was Antifa. And then, you know what I'm saying? And then, but it's not Antifa. That's fake. Who do you believe in? CNN? That's fake news. If they can just discredit your fact checker, if they can discredit liberal media, I go, Mom, there's something called journalistic integrity that CNN has, that the New York Times has. And here's how you know they have journalistic integrity. When they make a mistake, they come back on the next day and go, oh, last night on Wolf Blitzer, we said 41 people died. Turns out it was 21. We had a misprint. We apologize. You don't get to go, aha, see that they're not trustworthy. No, that's exactly what
Right.
makes them trustworthy. They have journalistic standards. Let me see Fox News do a retraction. Let's see OAN or Newsmax do a retraction. Your TikToks aren't going to do a damn retraction. So this idea that they can just discredit you immediately by calling you fake news, the original version of that was false prophet. Jesus said there'd be false prophets. So don't you go making sense on TikTok, guys. Don't you go making sense on this podcast. Because if you start making sense, it's just because you're silver-tongued devils and you're false prophets. It doesn't matter if what you're saying is real.
Well, we get abused by Christians, and I'm semi glad to hear you do as well. And so we have a segment we call Hate Comments of the Week. And so what do you hear from your listeners when they so lovingly share their thoughts with you in private comments, DMs?
I have a few. Probably I'll end with my favorite. Okay. I'll start with the more innocuous ones. So Christian listeners will write in and say, you never let your guests talk enough. And then atheist listeners will write in and be like, you let them talk way too much. How dare you let him ramble and preach for 7 minutes uninterrupted? That's my favorite. And I like to get those comments back to back, screenshot them and just tweet them out and be like, I don't know, I can't win. When my book came out, there was a review on my book. So my book is called Baptized Atheist, because the moment I was baptized kind of started my journey. Me going, uh-oh, this is pretty serious. I better figure out what I just agreed to. And that sent me on my journey. So, and then in 2012, it came out as an audiobook. And one of the comments under the audiobook, it may still be there, I don't know. It just says, Baptized Atheist, ? They should have held you under.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
oh my
that's
gosh.
up there. That's up there. But my favorite one, I actually have it right here, copied and pasted. It's a little bit longer than the others, but it's layered and very good.
Perfect.
Okay.
Here we go. Ready for this? My sexual thoughts about other men don't make me gay. If I took action on it, that's different. Just like my dreams of killing you doesn't make me a murderer, but your blood on my hands will.
Oof.
What?
Oof.
There are so many. Where to begin?
Oof.
That's my
Oh my
favorite.
gosh.
I'm gonna have that one framed, I think. Put it in the studio.
You really should. That's next level.
Oof. How about you, April? You have some hate comments?
Yeah, and I'm realizing I think I might have read some of these before, because I had a hard time finding some. But here, I'll just read. I had a Bible dude that this guy has kind of been obsessed with he follows me, and I don't know why, because I'm pretty sure he's Calvinist. And he's been leaving this comment on like random videos of mine that just says, why can you dish the heat but collapse when you're criticized? And I have no idea what that means, because I don't know if he's even criticized me or not. But the criticism that he said the other day was, I made my usual things Christians post on Facebook. And so he commented on it and said, you don't have any morality though. So how is any of this wrong? And then he stitched my video and then ran on this whole rant. Like, I'm not offended if like people think I get lumped in like atheist groups a lot just because I do a lot of the same type of content. But I'm actually a Christian. But he goes on this rant on how I'm an atheist, and since I hate God, that I have no morality. So since I don't have a morality, how could I even think that what these Christians are doing is wrong and harmful if I have no morality? Because I'm this girl, April, like started off pretending to like Christianity, but now she has no morality. And literally, like, it was like a 3-minute video where he just repeated the same thing over and over again. And his name was Bible Dude, was his username. I was just,
that's one of the more infuriating things, is that they try to take all of your ability to recognize suffering, all of your compassion, all of your love for humanity, all of your awe and wonder and desire to know more. They strip every bit of that away and say, unless you're a Christian, you don't get access to this. And I just want to say, do you think that didn't exist before Christianity? You think no one was nice to each other? If we needed the Bible and Christianity to be a civilized country or a civilized species, we would have never made it to the point in which that Bible and religion were created in the first place, because we'd just be raping and beating and pillaging each other like a bunch of animals, and it wouldn't even make sense to get us there. So saying that saying that morality came from religion is like saying words come from a dictionary. No, they both only recorded what already existed. Right. And now you're trying to take credit for something you wrote down that was already happening. People were behaving badly, and people were behaving in a way that was loving, and they were helping their neighbors and helping raise their neighbors' children, and they were building communities together before your version of this myth ever started. So to say that you can't have morality without that religion is ridiculous. I will say, if you do get the opportunity to send him a message or communicate to him in any way, please do tell him he has an open invitation to be my guest.
Oh, I'll if you want, I can send you his 3-minute spiel so you can
Bible Dude.
Little Bible Dude. Well, and it's funny because it's not even you have to be a Christian to have morality. It's you have to be their brand of Christianity to have morality, because we get demonized all the time.
By the way, on this, I wanted to, this is going on in the chat, and I don't want to call anybody out in public, but there was somebody who said Fox News is registered as entertainment, not news. And so I want to fact check here, because my response was, I don't think that's true. You know, Tucker Carlson in court had his attorney say that Tucker is entertainment, but I don't think Fox News am I wrong in this, guys? Fox News is not listed as somewhere legally as an entertainment network. I think there are people at Fox News that think they do actual news. Whether they do or not is arguable, but I mean, Fox News was the first network to call Arizona for Joe Biden. So I'm not saying they're good, but you're right. I don't think that's true, but I do think Tucker's lawyer said that he is entertainment, and everybody should know. But I don't even know where they would be registered as an entertainment entity.
So here's what I'll say. Rating is false. It says the claim Fox News changed its accreditation from news entertainment. Snopes says false.
But that doesn't necessarily mean liberal registered as a but it also doesn't mean that they are necessarily considered a news outlet. So they didn't change it, but we don't know what they were before they allegedly changed it. So I saw the same article just now, but we just haven't had time to read it all. But
y'all can go look it up.
and I don't think there's any place they would even register as news or entertainment. So I think that is
from what I'm seeing, it looks like that's exclusive to broadcast stations, and it is not to cable access.
Right.
So I don't even think cable access has to. When we talk about CNN, when we talk about the New York Times or MSNBC or journalistic standards, it has to do with their own policies that they've made public, and they hold themselves accountable to their own policies. And the proof of that is their ability to retract and make corrections.
And internally, having worked in news before, there would be, and you know how newspapers have the editorial section and they have the news section, or they used to, at least when we had newspapers. If Fox and by the way, MSNBC and CNN, if they were honest, they would have, for Sean Hannity and Rachel Maddow, you know, they would say, this is editorial, this is not news, this is commentary, this is opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's real news, they would have news. But cable, again, yeah, you're right, they are not regulated by the FCC, and they don't do that. So
that's why Don Lemon gets to say bullshit when he's quoting Bill Barr.
Right. Exactly.
Paul, what's your hate comment?
So the thing for me is, like, where I say, so agree with you, David, is Christianity as it's portrayed and walked out in right-wing Christianity in America today gives permission for people to be terrible, horrible people. And so I got a DM from a guy named Hunter, who has the University of Miami logo as his avatar. And he says, you are not a pastor. As a Christian, I can tell you, you are not a pastor. So I responded and said, what is your definition of pastor? Do you know where the Bible talks about pastors? Which, by the way, only one time is the term for pastor ever mentioned anywhere in the Bible. But just, that's a little side road. His response to that was, fuck you, Jewish blank, pejorative term for Jewish people, devil. You are a wolf in sheep's clothing. I said, thank you for this loving Christian comment. He says, the church fathers would have you tossed out the walls into the desert, you Edomite Jew.
Oh my gosh.
Ooh.
So then Frank, who has his picture of his dog as his avatar, says, are you working for China? My response was, this is the comment of the day. I have screenshot it. I will share it with all my friends. He says, you, sir, are an abomination to the faith. Go abort a baby. Are you a homo also?
Oh my gosh.
Scene.
Also.
There is, let me tell you, I think there are a ton of closeted gay men in Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
Just a ton, because I can't tell you how often my conversations end at some point with them saying, something about you being a F word, or
look, I one of them wants to kill me. I'm aware that they're out there, and there are TikToks where they do these kind of like what Chris Hansen did, right? Where he sets up meetings with people and then just walks up with his phone and goes, are you this so-and-so? And they go, yeah. And like, yeah, I'm the 14-year-old you thought you were just chatting with. And time after time after time, it's a pastor. It's a principal of a school. It's a cop with the thin blue line and the Punisher logo on his shirt. I mean, look, it's that oppression, and that I'm not allowed to express myself, and I'm not allowed to be open sexually, and there's all these rules. And so that deviant behavior that they talk about does start making its way. It's the same thing with Catholic priests. It's the same sort of mindset. Now, when you look at these hate comments you just got, here's the interesting thing, and this is something I'd like to ask my mom. Is there any doubt about who they voted for? And why is it so clear?
Mm-hmm.
You can disagree politically, but someone calling you a homo, someone saying you're not a pastor, someone saying fuck you to a pastor, and then saying that you're a false prophet and you're outside the faith and go kill a baby. Why is it so clear who that person voted for?
I know.
And if you agree with conservatism but disagree with those types of things, you need to ask yourself, why do you align with people who think and act that way?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's the great book that we reference often of Jesus and John Wayne. The writer says, "Hey, Christians didn't hold their nose and vote for Donald Trump. He is exactly the guy they wanted. They wanted some guy like that. I mean, why do we love movies with Bruce Willis, or that rogue cop that ignores the rules and says fuck it and does great things? Because we want somebody bad and violent to save us. And I think that's exactly who Donald Trump is to the church.
So many people want to be a bully.
Mm-hmm.
And when they get a chance to demonize a group of people to the point that they can justify it, then they can pretend to be the good guy while they are succumbing to these barbaric desires to bully and beat and shame and hurt somebody. I see it on both sides of the political aisle within extremes, but it's so much more prevalent on the right. They can demonize whoever they want and beat them up and do terrible things and say whatever they want, and they can justify it because ultimately they are the moral one for doing it. For beating
and let me do a public service announcement real quick. If Christian men out there, if you feel some strange urges inside when you watch my videos, it's okay. It's okay. Just let it out. We will support you in walking that inner feeling, that inner self out. So,
well, they just have so much self-hatred. There's a lot of guilt, especially because right-wing evangelical Christianity is so fear-based. Like, I grew up fearing the rapture, fearing hell. Like, you're taught grace, but you're also taught, like, make sure you didn't sin right before the trumpet sounds or you might burn forever, like, at the same time. And so you're just constantly, you kind of hate yourself. Like, Beecher and I were talking about it. Like, they are so obsessed with the idea of hell and having all these other people being eternally tormented. And I really believe it's because they are currently tormented. Like, they are not able to live their peace and their best life on this earth because they're chained with all of these different rules, and it's just unhappiness, and they see other people being happy, and what justifies them going through what they're going through here is the idea, well, they'll pay one day.
Oh man, that's exactly what I was trying to say. You just said it more eloquently than I ever could have. When I'm saying that these people are suffering from Stockholm syndrome, but they are their own captors.
Yeah.
It's not really what's happening. It's what they imagine God wants from them, and they're using that to torture themselves and be miserable. And that's why the phrase is spread all over now. There's no hate like Christian love.
Yeah.
You know how many teenagers we've helped on my show raise money for a new place to live because they were kicked out for being gay, or for telling on a Mormon church leader, a Mormon elder, for sexual abuse and not wanting to go back to the church. And the parents say, go to the church for counseling. And the young lady's like, that's who abused me.
Right.
You want me to go ask him to counsel me? Like, oh, he's going to get right with God. Just go talk to him. And they have to turn to an atheist podcaster and end up raising money and moving out of their home and getting their own place. I mean, my community has rallied around these people because the church is only a community as long as you stay in line. And the second you start trying to say, hey, I'm not okay with this, you're a threat at that point.
Yep.
And so you have to torment yourself and keep yourself in check, and think about how amazing it is for the church. You don't have to constantly do it. You give them enough information and enough fear and raise them in the indoctrination of fear that they control themselves the way you want them to be controlled. And that's why Napoleon Bonaparte said, religion is great stuff for keeping common people quiet.
So hell is the ultimate bully tactic.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimate.
Enjoy the flames. When Christian told me once.
April, I want you to be a guest on my podcast. Will you join me on my show?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because I want to flip it, and I want to find out why you still call yourself a Christian. Because I agree with all the haters. You don't sound very Christian to me. Let's talk about it.
So now, okay, they're gonna take this clip now and be like, "Look, see."
We do it. We do it. Okay, David, tell people where they can find you.
davidcsmalley.com. I'm David C. Smalley on everything. If you find my TikToks, it has nothing to do with this stuff. My Instagram, nothing to do with this stuff. It's my stand-up comedy. It's my daughter. It's my podcast with my daughter. We have a show called Daughter Issues where we talk about our generation gap. It's a comedy show. It's really fun. This stuff is exclusive to the David C. Smalley podcast. If you want to find that, old episodes of something called Dogma Debate, and my Twitter feed. If you're only about this philosophical debate stuff and politics, I would say Twitter and the David C. Smalley podcast. Everything else I do, whether it's the Jordan Harbinger show, I fact check things, or comedy stuff at the Comedy Store, or stuff with my daughter, none of it. I have to separate myself from this world in order to have a functional life outside of it because it's so taxing. But davidcsmalley.com is where you can find everything you need to know about me.
Do you and your daughter stage that stuff, or is that all legit?
It's all legit, man.
Oh, that's hilarious.
It's
That's
all
amazing.
legit.
I love
There
that.
have been a couple of times where something will happen in the moment, and we'll be filming, and there will be a technical issue, or a siren will go by, or something, and I'll back up and be like, Talissa, bring that same energy because I want to capture this again. Maybe 3 out of the 100 or 50 or 60 that we've posted, she's had to redo it as an actor, but the vast majority of it, man, I'm just catching her off guard. Today I asked her what Y2K was. She was like, money? I was like, what? I was like, what does the Y stand for? She's like, good point. I said, but how much money is it? And she just goes, 2K? It's adorable. I love it, and it's a blast. I love bringing problems from 1997 to her and just watching her face go, what words are you saying right now? It's a blast. So yeah, David C. Smalley on TikTok.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to April being on your podcast, and appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks so much.
for having me. Thank you for having me, but thank you more importantly for what you're doing. Seriously, I feel like Christians are more likely to listen to you than they are to listen to me. So keep up the fight, man. You guys are doing good stuff.
All right, Jeremy, we hope you're feeling better. We missed you tonight. And everybody out there, don't forget evangelicalish.com. Our new website is up. It has information about Nashville, our live event coming up on October 1st. We want to see you there, and how you can subscribe to help underwrite the show.
Awesome.
All right.
Oh, also, I'll be in Vegas this weekend doing stand-up comedy, so come see me.
Yeah.
Easy jump from here to Vegas. So yeah, good stuff. Well, David is our guest. We appreciate it, and we love you all, and we'll see you all next time on Evangelicalish. Take care.